What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Emerson Latzia holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a fun one coming up for you today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on the DraftKings Network. Catch the best of GoJo and Golic wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. That's noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. Emerson, what's coming up today? Tell us what we got.
All right, big man. In the words of the great Christopher Ostriker, how sweet it is to be loved by you. The men's Sweet 16 gets going tonight, gentlemen. Plus, Bayou Ballers, Jayden Daniels looking good, throwing the football against no defenders. He has large man hands, and Malik Neighbors shows out with his blazing speed. Plus, it's opening day. ESPN legend Tim Kurkjian, the giggler, will join the show and have an in-depth conversation with you two guys who you know very well, Mr. Kurkjian. But yes, opening day, guys. The Dodgers and Padres, sure, they played a couple games in South Korea last week, but this is the real opening day. All 30 teams in action here in the States, with the Brewers and the Mets leading the way starting at 1:10 Eastern time. Not a shocker. The Dodgers, after spending $1 bajillion in the offseason, are the favorites, followed by the Braves, Astros, Orioles, and Yankees on the World Series odds board. But just as a sports fan here, Gojo, opening day, what kind of feeling does it give you? What feelings do you feel? Or does it feel a little weirder this year considering everything surrounding Ohtani right now?
I just want to say opening day will feel better for me today because of Tim Kurkjian. Like, Dad, you work with Tim for a long time. I got to overlap with him a little bit. Having him on, Tim Kurkjian is the perfect appetizer for an opening day full of baseball, because that man, if you spend any time around him, his joy and love for baseball is so overwhelming that it makes you want to love baseball more. So I know after this today, I'll end up watching more baseball this afternoon because of the proximity to him. It's a fun fun day. It's like most of the best sports days are ones where you can buy in bulk, where it's just wall to wall. You've got it one after another here. You can sort of go and pick around. It's like an appetizer sampler platter, which is always a great decision when you're going out. So I'm excited for today, but I'm even more excited because I know I'm about to ingest pure, uncut Tim Kurkjian baseball joy.
Timmy Kurkjian was such a great guy. When I was at ESPN, between he and Buster Olney, the two baseball guys that we had on all the time, I mean, they're fantastic. But you're right, Tim's passion for the game, no matter if the worst thing is going on the game, he will make you love it. If you're dejected about the game and what has been going on, and there have been things obviously over the years, he still brings you back and makes you love it. So I'm so happy to have him on today, and happy to talk about what he's got coming up, in a father-son mode. That'll be fun to talk about as well. But opening day, listen, opening day is great. Certainly the Shohei news has tarnished it a little bit. But as you said, it's kind of like the first round of the NCAA tournament. You can buy in bulk, right? There's games on. Just keep flipping channels. There's games on everywhere. You can get your fill of baseball. Dodgers are obviously the story. I don't know of I'm trying to think of a team where you go in and say, man, if they don't win, it's going to be one of the biggest disappointments out there. We've certainly had those over the years. But it's a team that spent $1.35 billion in the offseason. They just capped it off yesterday by signing their catcher Will Smith to a 10-year, $140 million deal. They figured they'd do something right before, even though, again, we know their season started, but right before the regular season really starts, they tack on another $140 million. He's the third highest paid ever catcher behind Joe Mauer and Buster Posey. So they do that right out of the gate. Their payroll this year, $325 million. They picked up star after star. Shohei defers all that money so they have money and don't get nailed too much with the luxury tax. So it is them. It is Atlanta that we look to as being the dominant teams, and we'll see. This is one of those, again, it's 162 games, so It's a long season with many ups and downs, and we'll just kind of go through it and hope we get great things in the regular season, but we're all waiting to see what this Dodgers team can do once we get to the post, and we haven't even started yet, and the thought process is if they don't win it, it's a monster failure.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting now because like most scandals, Shohei Ohtani has a chance to mitigate some of it by just going out and balling. Like we've seen, the course of athletics history has been littered with people linked to any number of bad things, and almost always we as the public are generally willing to kind of get distracted the minute you see someone go out there and start doing great at whatever they're doing. So if Shohei gets out to a hot start, listen, people are still going to make gambling jokes. That's just how it's going to go. He's going to have a year full of people making weird puns or tweets or headlines about Shohei Ohtani related to gambling, and that's just kind of how the game's going to go. But yeah, our fascination is going to be trained out there. Obviously, Atlanta, the season that they had last year, they weren't able to cap off. The Houston Astros still, despite being in a division with the defending the defending World Series champions, going to be someone people look at as a favorite. And with all these known commodities around the sports, everyone wondering if the Yankees will stay healthy long enough to do their thing, there's no doubt we're trained out here on the left coast. So that part is going to be very interesting. I'd imagine we're still going to get Shohei Ohtani balling. We don't know how much this stuff is actually going to affect him or not. But like I said, we'll talk more about that with Tim Kurkjian coming up here in a little bit here. Speaking of buying in bulk, though, Emerson, we've got a few updates as we get ready. March Madness also getting back going today. Sweet 16 round in the men's tournament getting started. But for us, we got to update. We have got the Starch Madness bracket that's got a few updates, and we're in the final region of the Treat 16 that we have to get through the voting on now.
Yeah, I think first we're going to hit on the Beat the Golic standings, though. So if anyone out there watching entered the Beat the Golic's bracket, here is a look at the standings heading into the Sweet 16. So, gentlemen, right now, what do your picks look like for this round of the tournament? GoJo?
At this point, so I'm still in pretty good shape because most of my Final Four and beyond are intact. I have UConn and Purdue facing off in the title with UConn winning, so my champion is still on the board. I've had Duke making a pretty deep run. I've got them making the Final Four, so really need Jeremy Roach and company to hold that down. But Arizona still in the mix, Creighton still in the mix as well, Marquette. And so all these teams that I have, Dad, while the first couple of rounds I know you dominated, I'm still sitting here pretty with a couple of teams that are going to be very important to me later on playing basketball.
Yeah, I lost. I had UConn losing in this round to Auburn, and Auburn went and lost in the first round. So that part of the bracket, the upper left side, for those that's how they look at their bracket, mine got to be a bit of a mess as I picked UConn to be the first number 1 seed out. Everybody else is still in it for me. My eventual championship game was Purdue against Arizona, so I still have that intact. But yeah, this one hurt me a little bit because I had UConn out this round and they're looking so good. I am, by the way, I think there's right at 43,000 entries, and I am in 899th place. So I'm pretty happy about that. I know I'm beating all of you. I know I'm ahead of the entire, GoJo and Golic crew out there. I can safely say that. So I feel good about that.
Weird.
You know what the best part about
man.
that is, though, is you didn't have the forethought to actually make a bet with any of us on the outcome of the tournament the way you did for so many years.
No.
So
Coward.
even if you win now, it means nothing. There is absolutely no reward for it. You'll be no more or less respected by us and everybody here. And so
why?
Now you won't. Because listen, you don't win the whole thing, you don't win the case. That's how it goes. So you can be first amongst us, but that doesn't count for a whole hill of beans when it comes to the actual contest. And because you didn't ante up on the side, now you're just sitting out of here, walking with pride? You care about that?
Well, you know what I'll know is that deep down in everybody's soul on the GoJo and Golic crew will know that I am the best. So, and that's good enough for me. Mike, I don't need material things. Okay? I don't need to have my hand raised. All I need to know is all of you know that I was the best out of our crew. Yes, I'm not going to win this thing. Congrats to whoever wins it. And right now it's Bentley 0505 who has got the sole lead at number 1 with 600 points in our contest. And that's okay. I will stand and applaud to any person that wins this. But deep down, I will know. And more importantly, deep down, all of you will know I'm number 1.
Oh, yeah. That feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Say it
that
again.
felt good.
Yeah, say it again.
I don't know if that's going to work out very well for you. But I like where your head's at here. Go ahead and run with that. We'll all support it. The interesting part today, we've got the games coming up, as you mentioned. Today's Sweet 16, Clemson and Arizona, San Diego State at number 1, UConn, Bama, North Carolina, and Illinois and Iowa State. And I am genuinely excited to watch more UConn basketball. I am now, because I've had them picked as my national champion for a while, and because the idea of the first back-to-back since that 06-07 Florida team does seem very much within reach. We talked about the other day the fact that some of the quality that's arisen as we've gotten to know teams in the men's tournament this year clearly stands out, and UConn just looks like a force of nature out there. And they're led by a coach who's got a real fascination with underpants. We heard from the in the sideline on the last game that he wears the same Red Dragon underwear he wore in the 2023 NCAA tournament when they won. He's been wearing largely the same clothes and outfits. And then, the other day he got up in a press conference and was talking about players in the transfer portal and said, I just don't think it's healthy for someone to be able to change schools like underwear. Dad, real weird underwear kink for Danny Hurley apparently right now. Guy spends a lot of time thinking about drawers.
Well, it really is, because that became in the news. I think that was now in his head. That underwear is in his head. So it just, when you're speaking, that just kind of went to the forefront of his mind. And he went that way. And again, ripping the system that it is now. You may not like it, but you got to deal with it. That's all I got to say. If you don't like it, that's fine, but you better find a way to work with it.
He changes his underwear every 1 to 2 years. How often do you guys change your underwear?
Wait, so he... I missed that part. So he wears the same underwear, or like the same rotation of underwear he'll put in rotation for a couple of years?
He just changes his underwear every 1 to 2 years. I wasn't there to ask a follow-up.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
it's
that's
very
not enough
important
information.
follow-up, 'cause,
I mean,
a
to me,
single pair of underwear, you can't subsist on a single pair of underwear
it's like
for
that.
a year.
I doubt it's like that. I emailed you guys last night. I've had 2 pairs of underwear my mom bought me 9 years ago before moving to Boston. Those are the only 2 pairs of underwear that I rotate on and off my body, that I only have rotated on and off my body for the last 9 years.
Wait, 2?
Just 2. And like I was a little bigger when I got here, so it's all stretched out. Literally, I'm wearing the blue ones. Yesterday, I wore the orange ones.
Blue and orange.
Blue and orange.
2 pair.
2 pair. Swear to you. And a lot of the time during the winter,
is really humming.
a lot of the time during the winter, I don't wear underwear a lot during the winter time. I only mainly wear it when I sweat.
Well, I'll say this. Well, I'm going to say this, Mike. In all honesty, I feel a little better about that. Yeah. Because if he wore underwear every day and it was just 2 pair, I mean, I can't imagine the rotation of that and washing of that they made it through that many washes. So at least knowing that you don't wear underwear at some point gives those 2 pair a rest of going through the rotation. So I do understand that. They're
also dry fit. So we're not talking like soaked cotton that, maintains some kind of odd stench or something like that. Like these things dry out and, I smell pretty good. Even when I sweat, I do smell pretty good.
Why?
What do you mean, why? I don't need to go out and get underwear if I have 2 that have maintained their shape for the most part over 9 years. I'm not going to spend money on underwear. I'd rather spend money on food and other fun things and activities.
I mean, Emerson, if you had even just doubled that, if you had 4 pairs of underpants,
I get it.
That would be a more sustainable model than what you're dealing with right now. 2 seems like you're trying to prove a point to somebody, and I don't know who.
I'm not. I don't buy new clothes all the time. You could probably see the times where I've filled in for Jesse and Claudia on the show. I wear a lot of the same stuff all the time, just whatever's on top of the clean clothes pile.
Does your wife, I guess, just understand that you just gave up? I mean,
she's been able to discover that through many ways. Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. Because I have the same brand of underwear, but I have probably about 10 pair. 10 to 12 pair that I rotate through.
That's too much underwear. You don't need 10 pairs of underwear, bucko. Come on.
Why would you get on? I'm not getting on you for 2 pair. Who cares?
You're
10
getting
pair,
on me
they're
now.
the exact same
You're
brand.
getting on me now.
What do you do on vacation? What do you do on vacation?
Bathing suits on vacation.
What about the cold vacation?
I did if it's cold. I don't wear underwear.
What about the Super Bowl last year?
I had the same 2 pairs of underwear that I've worn yesterday and today with me at the Super Bowl last year. When we were hanging out, Golic Sr., when I hugged you there on our stage inside the Arizona Convention Center, I was wearing the same underwear that I'm wearing right now.
But it's been washed.
I have a lot of questions about the sanctity of that underwear, the way it's been compromised,
I'm built different, guys.
What's actually happening here. So I'm a little worried. We're going to come back to this, but I want to at least get one more update of substance in this segment before we devolve into full-on anarchy here. Yeah, let's get the Starch Madness bracket updated here so we get all bracket-related business out of the way in this segment and then can proceed accordingly.
All right, here we go. Here's the update on Starch Madness. So, number 1, Frosty beat Culver's Concrete Mixer, okay? Frosty, number 1 seed here. Culver's Concrete Mixer, number 5. That was with 63% of the vote, by the way, which to me, I said it yesterday on Twitter to GoJo and Golic. I said, dude, you could easily tell there are tons of people out there who have not had Culver's before because a concrete mixer just blows Frosty out of the water. I think you kind of mentioned that yesterday, Senior, on this show. DQ Blizzard just absolutely demolishing the McFlurry with over 90% of votes. So this sets up now a matchup for 2 absolute classics. The Frosty, the Blizzard, a chance to go to the Foodie 4 as the dessert region champion. Any surprises here?
No, I'm not overly surprised. I mean, Dairy Queen was almost unfair because that's what they do. The McFlurry's but one arm of the McDonald's machine. But quite honestly, this is good for diversifying the portfolio of this bracket, Dad, because McDonald's had a dominant run through the sides region.
They have, and I did say it yesterday, and Emerson just said it again. Culver's is more regional, so I don't think it had enough eyes, and in this case, tasting mouth on the concrete mixer, which I voted for. But DQ and McDonald's, those are two big time heavyweights. So that's a blue collar or a what do they say I'm not getting the term right for
blue blood.
Thank you. That's two blue bloods of the fast foods, right, with DQ and McDonald's. So that was a great matchup. I had voted for the Blizzard, so I'm happy that one won. So onward we go. But the regionalization does hurt some of these products.
Well, I'm glad you said onward we go, because now voting is open for the Treat 16 beverages here, gentlemen. GoJo, we're looking at number 1 seed Baja Blast. There's no doubt a blue blood in this department, against the Starbucks iced coffee, the 4 seed, McDonald's fountain, was it a Diet Coke or just a fountain Coke? Okay, yeah. Number 2, which okay. I mean, that orange high C there hits different. I can guarantee you that. Against the Sonic Cherry Limeade.
Yeah, no, I think the Fountain Diet Coke is going to have an absolute banger of a time here and destroy the Sonic Cherry Limeade. I am wondering about the Baja Blast versus the Starbucks iced coffee, because, man, iced coffee sustains a lot of people.
Yep.
I felt like this was going to be chalk because I love Baja Blast, but I understand this is a nation of coffee addicts, and so this kind of becomes a dangerous matchup. I'm very curious to see how this one goes.
I think this is going to, because we've had a 3-2 upset. I don't think we've not had the 4-1. So I think we could get it here. I agree with you. I think we are a coffee drinking nation, and Starbucks is, right there at the top when you mention coffee and the amount of, we talk about regionality. I mean, Starbucks obviously is everywhere. So well known. So I think Starbucks might be able to pull off the upset here.
Baja Blast has such it's so special. It's at a place that we've talked about. It's a chain that's everywhere. It's not regionally associated here. Everybody's been to or knows of Taco Bell here. It is a specialty beverage, and for so long has only been available at Taco Bell. It's been gatekept in that community. And so because it's a little rarer versus iced coffee, I mean, most people have that as a part of every day versus a Baja Blast that might be once in a blue moon once you're out of college when you're feeling a little frosty and all of a sudden it's time to pull the trigger on that. So at GoJo and Golic on Twitter, I'm a little worried for my sweet Baja Blast son, but we're going to give democracy a chance to do the right thing here. Vote, get out, and help. We appreciate everyone's work on that so far. Coming up next, though, basketball got real dramatic yesterday on the men's and women's side. We'll get to it next here on GoJo and Golic.
some things just never change here, folks. On Wednesday night, Draymond Green getting himself ejected less than 4 minutes into a battle against the Orlando Magic. The Warriors, given where they are in the standings, not a shocker when we all saw Steph Curry was emotional, was well aware of the potentially bleak reality that awaits now Golden State. Here he is after the loss, or the win, rather.
All I say is we need him. He knows that. We all know that. So whatever it takes to keep him on the floor, he'll be available. That's what's got to happen, especially at this point in the year. So it's a tough way to start the game, but I am extremely proud of every single person that stepped foot on the floor tonight and responded the way that they did, because back to back, the team as physical as they are, we got contributions from everybody, and it was a beautiful team effort to respond the way that we did and get this win.
GoJo, we were talking about it a little bit before the show. I know his stats didn't necessarily jump off the page, but you could see after that moment and Draymond got ejected, how emotional Curry was. He definitely was playing with a spark at times throughout the night.
Yeah, especially towards the finish line there. Yeah. Like, Steph knows what's at stake, and he's also, I think, Dad acutely aware of how different their standing in the league is right now. Like, the fact that the Lakers, the Warriors, these teams that for so long, at least LeBron James, I should say, and the Warriors, were the face of the league, were the team in the finals every year, were the dynasty of modern basketball, are now sitting here fighting with the Rockets to try and stave them off out of that 10 seed in the play-in tournament. This is already a very different place in life for Steph Curry to operate in. And so now knowing the stakes are very different and seeing the same reaction and response he's seen from Draymond for almost a decade now, I think it's a different level of frustration where he looks and understands the context is different and is wondering why this guy he's gone to battle with for so long can't see that too.
Oh, listen, I agree. I mean, this isn't new, gang. I mean, what we saw when you read the headline, Draymond Green ejected, you could, if you just see that headline, you could say, okay, what year are we talking about? Because it happens, happens a lot over the years. But as you mentioned, when it happens when they're the best team, you can absorb it a little more. Now you're fighting just to stay in the play-in. You're fighting just to stay in the play-in. So it's even more important that that guy is on the court. And, we're going to talk about Houston and their 10-game winning streak. We heard one of their teammates already, his teammates come out and already talk about Dillon Brooks. And Dillon Brooks isn't on the level of Draymond Green, but still saying, man, we need the guy to stay in the game. And that's kind of where Steph is more softly saying, we need Draymond to be in the game. We're a 10 seed now. We're not the best team in the NBA anymore. We need every bullet we got. So yeah, I mean, and the thing about it is, Mike, Draymond knows that. Draymond's known that for years, but it's very difficult to change a guy who plays like this or a guy's personality. I mean, he's a line stepper, always has been thrown out of games, cost his team by not being on the court. He's done it for years. So we can sit here and say, boy, I hope he changes. He's not going to change. At least I don't think he's going to change.
Oh, but Daddy did all the therapy this year, and he got the help this year during his suspension, and he went through all that, and he's changed on the other side now. Isn't that how that works?
No, dude. I saw a funny meme where it was like pre-therapy Draymond and then post-therapy Draymond, and it's the same picture. Well, I mean, for the office meme.
Listen, I know therapy can be great for people, but when it's mandated for you and you come out of it and say exactly what you should say when you have to get it, to get back, and you have to do it to get back into your whatever line of work you're in, you're going to say how great it was, and boy, did it help me, but yet I'm the same. Mike, I need help, though. You were the academic All-American in the family. So I need an explanation of this line. Crew Chief Mitchell Irvin told the pool reporters that Green was given the second technical foul because, quote, after a prolonged diatribe, Green directed egregious, profane vanguard towards a game official. I mean, I know what that means. He said some magic words to the guy and talked too long, but what is that line? Egregious, profane vanguard towards a game official. Not going to lie. Never heard that. Never heard it described like that.
Vanguard, yeah. Pretty sure they have my 401k.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not I think this guy must do like a lot of like role playing games on the weekend or something like that. Maybe he's into LARPing.
Sounds like a freaky little game night.
He phases back into medieval diction there when he's cosplaying on the weekends. I'm not sure because that's above and beyond even my pay grade there as the pseudo smart guy on this show. But you could very clearly see the magic words that he said after that whole altercation. And I guess that's the part, Dad, where part of me looked at jokingly like, oh, this is growth. He didn't get thrown out for choking someone or hitting someone in the nuts or a whip around shot with his elbow. He did it with his words this time around. So maybe part of that is growth. But to your point about this has happened before, this version of it and this quick nature of it actually hasn't all that much. He is the first player to get ejected at least 4 times in a season since Kevin Durant got tossed 5 times in the 2017-2018 season, according to ESPN Stats and Info. And this is the second time that Draymond was ejected in the first quarter this season, per ESPN Stats and Info. He is the only player with multiple first quarter ejections in a season over the past 20 campaigns. This year in particular, Dad, of all the years that we've talked about it, of all the Draymond years, of all the dynasty years, we have never seen him do this particular thing this often in that entire time. And so now in the year where he is needed most, I mean, hell, that Mind the Game podcast that's doing great for LeBron James and JJ Redick right now, where they're going inside and doing all this deep dive basketball stuff, they spent a lion's share of the second episode talking about the Warriors and some of the action they run, and a lot of that time spent on Draymond Green and his role in this as a passer and a distributor and how great he is for this team. And you've got that existing coming out in the morning, and then in the evening you've got Draymond getting ejected in the first quarter of a game that they have to have so they're not embarrassed getting walked down by the Houston bleeping Rockets right now. And so for all the people that might have been out there, I think most people felt bad for Steph Curry, and I think most people do feel bad for Steph because they realize what he's holding together out there out of fealty to this organization that's been so good to him. But this was, again, even by Draymond standards, particularly egregious because he knew once he had been teed up what happens next. He knew the choice that he was making there, and there's not going to be remorse on the backside of this, and I think that's the maddening part for Steph.
I'd feel bad for Steph if he never won a championship, but he's got a fistful, so I'm not too worried about him and feeling bad for athletes. But
that's a good point.
To that point, I get what you're saying, the frustration level that goes on, and a guy who just doesn't learn. But, Mike, he's not the only one. We've all played with players like that who are on the edge players, and you kind of hope that they're the type of players you say, man, I'd love to play with them, but I'd hate to play against them type of a guy. But if you play against them, you may be able to egg them on into a personal foul or a penalty or whatever sport you're in. So
it doesn't even seem like it's fun to play with them right now, though. Now it's getting frustrating. But you know what? It was fun when he was doing that and they were winning championships. They were still all smiles that they could get through it all and be the best, even though Draymond was being Draymond. Now Draymond being Draymond may be part of the reason that if they get dumped out of the playoffs altogether because he can't stay on the court. And it's a shame because the only place it's going to come from is him. He's the only one that has to be self-aware enough that as much as even after I gave that line that the official said, he also said Green's history absolutely did not have an impact on the decision to hand out the 2 Ts. Now, you can say that all you want after the game, but you're human beings, officials and players, and you can't tell me that there's not going to be a little extra sauce given, to Draymond when he starts going off, and the refs may pull the trigger a little quicker on him, and I would understand it because you know what? He's earned that. He has earned that by his actions in the past, and you keep wanting him to understand. People can tell him. He can have mandated therapy, blah, 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 blah. It all has to come from him, and unfortunately, he's now doing it at even a higher rate than he's done before. It's just kind of weird that this is the way the Warriors are going to go out because we know this core is not going to be together next year, and it's going to be very interesting the tenor this season ends on for what was the premier dynasty of the last 8 or 10 years in the NBA to now see all right, they're going to be a play-in team maybe at this rate, but beyond that, we really have no idea, and what goes from there is going to be an interesting dismount for this team.
All right, guys, listen to this. Iowa women's basketball star Caitlin Clark just landed a $5 million offer from Ice Cube's Big Three Basketball League. So Ice Cube has confirmed that an offer was made to Clark. He did not get into the details of said contract. But if Clark accepts this offer here, GoJo, from Big Three, the league would still allow her to compete in the WNBA. And keep in mind, while Clark is in line for a substantial compensation from sponsorships outside of her WNBA salary, the Big Three offer will pay her far more than a potential WNBA salary would. What do you think she should do?
Take the money and play 10 games?
Absolutely.
Like, I understand that this isn't without risk, and certainly injuries always there. The WNBA, I'm sure, is her main goal, her main priority, all those things. And I can understand if she wanted to keep the main thing the main thing. It's a great payday. She's also not going to hurt for money. But that being said, it seems too easy to pass up here, Dad. And I'd say that's the same thing from the Big Three side of this. Now, Ice Cube came out and had a lot to say about this on Twitter, that this was not an offer they intended to go public, especially during the tournament. Maybe wink, wink, nudge, nudge on that, because it's great publicity at a time where her star is the absolute highest here. And for the Big Three that has been clashing at times with the NBA about its place in basketball and trying to continue to build up brand relevancy, this is an understandable move from a PR standpoint. I think where Cube got in trouble was some of the things he tried to say in justification to this move and what it was about ended up rubbing a few people the wrong way in the women's basketball community. But what did you make of this, Dad?
Well, I mean, I think Ice Cube has also been frustrated at, while Big Three has been growing, the lack of continued growth and getting bigger and bigger and grabbing more eyes. I think there's frustration there. So I think it's a great PR move to put eyes on the league. They have two women, I think, already now, right? Nancy Lieberman is a coach, and Lisa Leslie, I believe, is a coach, or they were or still are. I'm not positive. But no women players ever, obviously, in this. So Caitlin would be the first one. I don't know if Caitlin Clark believes it would be too much like a show, of doing this, which it is. This is about getting eyes on the Big Three and taking, the most talked about person in basketball, men or women's side right now, probably college or pro, in Caitlin Clark, and putting her on the court. So I get it. I get why Ice Cube would do it. They were talking about off the court, she may make $3 or $4 million. I would think it almost a year, not, I know she signed deals that were more than that, but we're talking about a year. And so she's certainly not going to be hurting for money, but man, when you get to play your sport, albeit in a 3-on-3 against guys, but play 10 games, 8 or 10 games and make $5 million, that's a tough call. That's a tough call to pass up. Now, I don't know if because she also knows as soon as she committed to do it, in WNBA, she's one of many women in the WNBA, and we know the spotlight will still be on her in that league. But this would be a unbelievable spotlight on her. She would be the first on the court with just the guys in the 3-on-3. And again, we know what the situation is and why Ice Cube is doing it. And I don't know if she wants to be, I'm not saying she can't handle the spotlight. I'm just saying in this particular situation, I don't know if she wants to be the center of that attention.
Yeah, it would be very interesting, I think, from that standpoint. Part of my brain that's always guarding against the worst possible outcome is if she went and played in this and all of a sudden there was a negative highlight of her, especially playing against men. Right. That's all that the knuckle-dragging crowd of naysayers that would want a war against women basketball would need to try and fuel their argument and use all that, even if it wouldn't be indicative. And I'm sure she would be able to more than hold their own. I mean, I don't think people understand how often men and women, especially in college on these campuses, play basketball against one another, and how good these women are for all the guys that think that they could go out there and ever hang with one of these young ladies playing basketball here. You have no idea. I could very, very clearly state that based on a lot of personal experience that I've seen. But I think overall, Dad, this one, I don't know if it comes to fruition, because again, I think she makes so much money, and for her, you're right. she's been in the eye of the storm for a while. And I think in this tournament, we've kind of seen some of that frustration of being the constant center of attention and going through this. So many people made note in the first round of the tournament of the way that she was responding and reacting to certain things, throwing the ball off her head, all the gesticulation and the movement towards the refs and stuff looked like frustration of a person that might be maybe feeling in a moment of humanity for a star player that we just assume has this all despite being a young woman right now, might actually be feeling some of the weight of constantly being the center of attention.
And I also think she would like the center of attention to be on, I'm not saying her, but on the WNBA. And this would be during the WNBA season. As a matter of fact, it would be two of the big three games would conflict with the Fever schedule. The others wouldn't. But still, everybody would be like, oh, when is she going to be in that big three against the guys? We're going to watch that. And the focus, maybe she feels the focus would be too much on that and not on the WNBA, and especially her with Indiana. So I don't think she's going to do it. I don't think a decision has been made yet. I would say, if you're asking me, is she going to do it or not, I do not think she is going to do it. Like I said, it's during the WNBA season. When we talk about the women that play overseas, it's after, it's not in the season with the WNBA. So again, by rule, I don't even know if she's allowed to do it, but let's just say she's allowed to have the choice. I don't think she's going to do this.
I think this is an interesting headline. I think this was a smart business move by the big three. And I'm not even saying it was nefarious or underhanded or anything. Like, I'm not accusing Ice Cube of anything other than, hey, this is a great opportunity. This is the center of the basketball world in college right now, one of the biggest names in the sport in general. Let's try and get associated with that. But I think you're right. I think ultimately the juice isn't worth the squeeze here on a number of levels for Caitlin Clark and what this would entail for someone that very clearly, and like I go back to a lot, right? Thompson did a phenomenal piece profiling Caitlin Clark that came out right at the start of the tournament. And this really seems to be a young woman that is just about the ball. Like, she's got a lot of, based on what I've read and what we've seen of her, a lot of Kobe Bryant to her DNA and the way that she approaches the game in an almost maniacal fashion, where it is such dedication and she is so all in on this that makes it hard to trust teammates at times that she's not sure as dedicated as she is. All of that reeks of a person who I think is just going to keep the main thing going forward. So, you know what, Dad? It's interesting seeing this conversation come a day after one that I was actually heartened by, because this one is kind of an attention grab. This is the economy of eyeballs. These are all the things that we're used to here. It was really cool the other day, and I did want to mention this on the show at some point. The finalists came out. The 4 finalists for the Naismith Women's College Player of the Year came out the other day, and it was Stanford's Cameron Brink, Paige Beckers from UConn, Juju Watkins from USC, and of course Caitlin Clark at Iowa. And seeing debate culture in sports go in on this. I know not everything has to be a sign of look how far the women's games come, but it was generally cool to see a lot of well-informed opinions, because obviously people like me were out here beating the drum for Hannah Hidalgo, wondering why she wasn't on this list, despite having a largely better statistical profile than Paige Beckers, being a higher seed, coming from a better basketball conference this year. But I digress. But seeing people with informed responses and opinions and caring about this, going out and arguing, and this becoming an actual part of the discourse was really encouraging to me, and just another one of those signs of where we're at right now.
I completely agree. And I completely agree with your thought of why Hannah Hidalgo was not on this list. There were 2 true freshmen making the first team AP. It was her and Juju Watkins, who is on this list, and taking nothing away from anybody on this list. But I'm not sure why Hannah is not on this list. She was, I think, the 4th leading scorer in the country, number 1 in the country in steals. So it was a little surprising, but I don't think it would have mattered, Mike, who was on this list. Caitlin Clark is going to win this award. Right. It's nice to be one of the finalists, but this one, I'm sure they've already put Caitlin Clark's name on the award, because this is going to be a no-brainer as far as her and this award this year.
Yeah, it's largely ceremonial. It's like it's like in college basketball in general. It's why they hang banners for the Final Four, because even getting to that point in a single elimination tournament matters, just as being a finalist for a lot of these awards is something that goes in your bio. It's something people reference. And you're right, it doesn't matter a ton, but most of the stuff in sports doesn't matter a ton, and yet we argue about it anyway. And so it was fun to see a lot of people arguing about this, and it was even more fun to see friends of ours like Tarika Foster Brasby, who came on the show, arguing on the right side of history that Hannah Hidalgo absolutely deserved to be one of those 4 in this range. Coming up next, let's take a look at the NFL. Bold business practices from one man at the helm of a big decision coming up in regards to 49ers QB Brock Purdy next.
Got me standing up because I'm wearing pants today, gentlemen. A low-key busy day in NFL free agency yesterday on Wednesday. So we'll start here with Jadeveon Clowney, agreeing to a 2-year deal worth up to $24 million with the Panthers. The Panthers, who are tied with the Patriots, by the way, for lowest preseason win total at 4.5. You also had, and the Rams, after they cleaned out their whole roster, everyone kind of thought they'd be aggressive in the offseason, right? Well, Tre'Davious White making his way to LA. Maybe a little bit of an aggressive deal there. I know it's worth up to $10 million, but this is a guy coming off Achilles injury back in October. And then Josh Reynolds, Denver, surprising many of its fans by going out and grabbing the former Lions wide receiver. So which of these moves your Golic needle the most, GoJo?
Yeah, Dad, I mean, I think the big name everyone's going to latch onto here is probably Clowney. He had a really good season last year in the context of that Baltimore defense, and now he's going down to Carolina to be one of the guys in charge of replacing the production from Brian Burns that they let walk and sign a massive free agent deal with the New York Giants. And so I think over the course of Clowney's career, it's been interesting to kind of see what's happened. He's a guy, and Carolina did the right thing. They sent out the hype video, and what did they do? Guy coming back to the same state he made his name in at South Carolina, well, in North Carolina as opposed to South Carolina, but the Carolinas, coming back down to the same area where he made his name in college, and they posted the highlight from the Michigan game where the helmet came flying off. And it's like, yeah, we all know that was the original sell for Clowney. Now it's kind of evolved into, hey, he's still an elite run defender. He's a guy that can give you absolutely pass rush wiggle and is still a problem on the perimeter. But I do wonder what it looks like for him at this age as the focal point of that pass rush, as opposed to just a guy that's one part of the process that they had in Baltimore.
He is close to home. He's a native of Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is 25 minutes south of Charlotte. We know he went to South Carolina as well. What's interesting, he's played 10 years in the league. He was the number one pick overall as a D lineman, Mike, and he's never had a double-digit sack season. He got 9.5 in 2017 in Houston, and he got 9.5 last year in Cleveland, so which got him this deal by, in his 10th year, getting 9.5 sacks. So the thought is, obviously you talked about the run as well, but if he can give you some pass rush ability. But I thought that interesting, a number one draft pick, a D lineman, and never had double digits in sacks. But with a big year last year, gets this deal. It's kind of, these mercenaries, Von Miller did that, has popped to a couple of teams like the Rams and with Buffalo to try and be that pass rusher. We've seen other guys do it as well. I'll be interested in Tre'Davious White, quite honestly, going to L.A. Here's a guy that a few years ago was, one of the top corners in the league. Then he blows out a knee 2 years ago, comes back, plays some games, and plays in the playoffs. And then last year gets an Achilles, so he signs and he's still, coming off the Achilles injury. So I'll be interested to see how he can come back. But he signs a one-year deal. We've seen a number of one-year deals this year of guys just trying to get back out on the field, prove themselves to get another deal after it.
Yeah, Trey White, Achilles injury for a defensive back, you get a one-year deal. Quarterback and Kirk Cousins gets Achilles injury, and you get more money than God guaranteed because your position's not predicated on you going out there and being able to actually do athletic things. So, we'll get to some of the NFL win totals are fascinating to me. And one in the crosshairs for me is the Los Angeles Rams sitting there with the over-under set at 8.5 because on one side, the offense is going to be a monster, but defensively now you're in the world post-Aaron Donald. And that changes the math even for a group that stumbled into some really good young pieces on that side last year. But overall, your identity is going to change now. Raheem Morris is gone and coaching the Atlanta Falcons. So there's a lot of turnover defensively for a team that offensively I think is going to be an out-and-out problem for the NFL next year. So we'll get to those coming up off the top of the next hour, though, Dad. What I want to get to now, Emerson, was something that was really interesting yesterday. As we've heard around the NFL owners' meetings, a lot of different team personnel coming out here and putting their name on certain takes. And 49ers CEO Jed York, I thought was unusually candid about the situation that they've got coming up with their quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody knows, and if you don't, Brock Purdy's going to be eligible for a gigantic contract extension a year from now. And the 49ers, yes, GoJo apparently have begun to plan for it. So York saying this week at the NFL annual meeting, it's a good problem when your quarterback is one of the highest paid guys on your team and in the league. So he seems highly aware that this is just the way that it works for good quarterbacks. This dude's getting the bag. He's going to get the bag eventually, and he has 100% earned it.
Yeah, Dad, I think we've talked about this before on the hypothetical about what a fascinating conundrum this is going to be for a 49ers team where the sell has been the roster. You've got all pros so deep on both sides of the ball, and how much that's going to change with the quarterback. We watch it happen all the time. We've seen it happen with teams like Buffalo, with Cincinnati, certainly with the Kansas City Chiefs, who have had to completely remake their roster since paying Patrick Mahomes and get younger in a lot of areas. And now for the 49ers, where that's been through multiple quarterback changes. When Jimmy Garoppolo was there, it was the same idea, is you have this Death Star of a lineup that can insulate a quarterback inside an offense that's as quarterback friendly as there is in the NFL. But Brock Purdy now has come out of nowhere and established himself with a statistical profile where, Dad, if he plays the way that he played last year, and now he's going to have a full offseason that he didn't have last year when he was recovering from injury, another year in an offense that he already knows really well has excelled in, that still has so many of those great parts in it, it's hard to see him not being able to replicate that kind of success, Dad. And if he does, Jed York understands, but I thought was wild seeing someone on the team side admit, yeah, we're probably going to have to pay him whatever he wants.
It's interesting when Jed York said that it's a good problem that if you're paying your quarterback top salary, it means good. I don't know if Mara or Jerry Jones think that in New York and Dallas, paying both Daniel Jones and Dak Prescott both making $40 million a year. I don't know if they feel real happy about that, but it's timing. If there's not going to be another quarterback out there, your quarterback is showing signs, you're going to pay them. That's just how this market works. So, Mike, I mean, you're right. I mean, 68% completion, 44 touchdowns, just 15 interceptions. He led the league in a lot of categories last year. It's what he's done, and I know I don't care if people are going to talk about the weapons around him. He's getting it done. The top salary right now of amount is Joe Burrow at $275 million, $146 guaranteed. Then Justin Herbert at $262, Lamar at $260, Jalen $255, Kyler Murray $230. His deal is he's gonna be the next highest paid quarterback in the league. I mean, and Jed York understands that. It's going to be a record deal. And we always talked about things you can do and people you can pay until you have to pay your quarterback. Well, they've hit the marker. Next year, they're going to hit it. They're going to have to pay their quarterback, and then the salary cap gets tightened up a little bit when you're, putting 45, 50 mil or over toward each year toward your quarterback.
I think Dallas is a prescient example, though, and I go back to something I've heard Dan Orlovsky say a ton of times on ESPN, is you get in trouble when you pay good quarterbacks great quarterback money. And out of this context, which I don't know if we'll ever have to see, right? Kyle Shanahan's still going to be the coach. This is an organization that's drafted extraordinarily well. So many of these guys are homegrown picks that turned into stars for them outside of a guy like Trent Williams they brought over in a trade. But I look at this with Brock Purdy and go, can he offset all of that? Or is this going to be a situation where we find out, much like Dak Prescott, like, hey, you paid him top of the line money. Dak Prescott is not one of those top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. We've firmly established that now. And I can already say that comfortably about Brock Purdy. He is not Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. He is not that group of quarterback, but he's played well enough to go out there and earn in that range, much like we've seen with other guys like Kirk Cousins, who, hey, if you play well enough and are consistent enough at that top end, teams are going to have no choice because there's just not that many guys that can do this.
No, listen, I agree. And it's timing. We've seen guys get deals and we're like, how did he get a deal like that? Because of the timing, his turn. It's his turn. It's going to be, if Brock Purdy, now again, they can extend it next year. That doesn't mean they have to. So if Brock Purdy does have another season like he's had, the efficiencies that he's had and how well he played, they'd be fools not to. What will be more interesting is if he doesn't have a great year and they're in that position. Well, they can wait one more year then, obviously, but that would muddy the waters a little bit.
Yeah, I see that as really unlikely. And again, this all does underscore, we need to go back to dead last pick in the draft. I know the Mr. Irrelevant thing's been beaten into the ground, but the fact that this conversation is being had about this particular player is an insane testament to one of the best stories in sports.
right, everybody, we have a Starch Madness update for you here for the Treat 16 Bevies. So right now, Baja Blast, top seed, going up against the 4 seed, Starbucks Iced Coffee. Currently, on Twitter, Baja Blast GoJo, 54.3% of the vote. You said earlier in this show you were a little nervous that your beverage of choice here was going to be upset. So far, so good. And then you have the McDonald's Fountain Soda, number 2 seed, going up against the Sonic Cherry Limeade and the 3 seed. I don't have an update on that one for you.
I have that.
What do you have?
I have
What do you
that.
have?
The Sonic Cherry Limeade is leading right now, 56% over the number 2 McDonald's fountain drink with 44%. So you can pull an upset there. You could absolutely pull off an upset there.
What do you think, GoJo? Because the Orange High C, the Sprite, I don't know what it is with the syrup ratio to the actual like soda water. It's so different at McDonald's. Coke, Sprite, anything tastes 10 times better at McDonald's than if you go grab it at the grocery store or even at any other restaurant.
Well, and that's why I thought the lure would be enough to carry it, because you're right. The Fountain Diet Coke, it is a different entirely than the glass bottle Cokes that are even like lionized in that community, a canned Coke. Anywhere else you get it, it doesn't quite hit the same. I'm with you. They've done something funky with the formula there, and I'm not mad at them. So a little bit stunned by this one. I did not think Sonic Cherry Limeade would have the juice.
I am really, really surprised at this. I really am. The McDonald's fountain drink it hits different. I mean, I've already told you, Mike, how your mother, when I'm out and she wants a Diet Coke from somewhere and I'm coming home, it's McDonald's Diet Coke. And just yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I was out and I'm like, on the way home, you need anything? She said, would love a Diet Coke. So McDonald's was actually out of the way a little bit, so I stopped at another place I've got them, which is actually a bigger cup. It's a monster-sized cup and I got Diet Coke, and I brought it in and I set it down, and in 36 years of marriage, I could count on one hand the times, luckily, the times where she's utterly disappointed in me. This was one of them. Her comment was, "Oh, it's not McDonald's."
Oh, she hit
and
you
I
with
could
an
just hear in her voice the disgust in me that I didn't go wherever I had to go to get to a McDonald's to bring a DK or a DC from McDonald's. So I am surprised at this possible upset.
Yeah, it's the standard is the standard, and you fell below that line, and you found out the wrath of mom yesterday when you did it. So
I did.
I can imagine you won't make that mistake again now, Dad. You got to be coachable. Nope. You can't let one mistake turn into 2. You can't make the same mistake twice. And so mom just getting you coached up out there at GoJo and Golic is where you can vote on that. We also need people to vote on, since Emerson brought this into the universe, how many pairs of underwear should one human own? We've got 648 votes in right now. The picks are 2 to 4, 5 to 7, 8 to 12, and 13 to 20. Emerson 2 to 4, which is the space you occupy as a 2 underpants man, has 0.3% of the votes right now. So you might be the only vote for that at this point in time.
I took a screen grab, right? I was the first one to vote in the poll. So at one point, I want everyone to know 100% of the vote was on 2 to 4. Okay? And then it's just been downhill since then.
Emerson, you have a chance to be Twitter's main character today, because I have not seen, I'm getting texts from people in my life saying this can't possibly be real, and there's no way an adult man only has 2 pairs of underwear. How does he travel? How does he move through life? How much does he sweat? You have quickly become the center of the universe today.
I am an open book. Anybody can ask me any questions or follow-ups. I'm trying to get back to as many people as possible here on Twitter, because as we know, everybody is very even-keeled and, yes, very respectful at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, 2 pairs, in all honesty, I don't know how they're still held together after all the washings.
Because there's a strong dry fit. Maybe, like, look at this thing.
Whatever, dude. Dude, whatever. I don't want to know how they smell. I don't want to know anything about them. I tried to give you, like I said, a little bit of benefit of the doubt by you saying in the wintertime you go commando, which is cool. That's less time you have to wear one of the 2 pair of underwear, so you're not wearing them out as much. So I tried to give you a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there. I'm not going to lie, though, guys. I am a little surprised right now. leading in that vote by a very, very small margin is 13 to 20 pair. Second is 8 to 12 pair. I mean, people own a lot of underwear.
That's too much underwear.
Smokes.
You have to have an entire drawer then. If you have 13 to 20 pairs of underwear, you have to have an entire drawer dedicated to it.
Underwear's small. It doesn't take up a ton of space. These aren't hoodies.
Emerson. You can come over to my place and look. And the only reason I have over 10 pair of underwear is we had a deal back at ESPN with a certain company and they sent us a bunch of underwear. And I like them. That's the only reason I have the amount of pairs I do. And I have over 10 pair only because of that. It fits in one half of one drawer.
Now I see myself.
They don't take up a lot of space.
Now I see myself in your bedroom, your wife coming in and seeing me just looking in your underwear drawer. One,
Emerson going on a panty raid in my dad's closet.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
Jesus. All right. Now, with the last visual, we definitely did. Christ almighty. Let's move on to NFL win totals, guys. Yesterday, they hit DraftKings Sportsbook as I try and migrate. We've had to deal in the last 2 weeks with the image of my dad in the bathtub on OnlyFans, and now Emerson huffing his underwear in his closet.
Hey.
We need to find God collectively and get on to these NFL win. No, Emerson, you're timeout right now for being a sicko.
No,
we're going on
done.
to NFL win totals. And
No.
I need to talk about this, Dad, because I was genuinely curious. We brought up a little bit of this yesterday with Fitz when we were talking. But as the win totals came out on DraftKings, there were a couple that were really interesting to me here. I don't know if any jump out to you right away, Dad, but I think the fascinating... So there's obviously like the upper crust of this, Kansas City, San Francisco, and Baltimore, sitting there at 11.5 wins, set at the over-under. For all those teams last year, Baltimore and San Francisco went over that. They won 12 and 13 games respectively. And what most people allotted for as the worst Chiefs team of this iteration of the dynasty that ultimately won the Super Bowl only won 11 games last season. Those ones being the upper crust doesn't surprise anyone. The way these teams are grouped all makes sense. But where it gets interesting to me are the 9.5, 8.5 win total groupings there, where you've got the Jets that are predicted at over under 9.5, the Houston Texans at over under 9.5, and then the Rams and the Steelers both at 8.5 each, Dad. The Steelers going over 8.5 wins seems like the freest money mankind has ever offered you out there. And I understand none of that's actually there. We had this conversation with Reese Davis the other day. Like, obviously, there's risk associated with all of this. But as far as things that I feel pretty comfortable with, it's Mike Tomlin and company being able to win more than 8.5 games in any given season, let alone coming off last year where you look at that team that won 10 games with a change in coordinator during the season, quarterback injury running through that team. And now I understand the situation's not totally stable, but my God, at the very least, you've got two quarterbacks that have been, in one case, a Super Bowl winning starter in Russell Wilson, who got stabilized last year a bit, and then Justin Fields, who played some of the best football of his career to the back half of last season that made even the conversation around the number one pick a conversation for a little bit. And so I just feel like with those things and an improvement in offensive coordinator with Arthur Smith coming over, them hitting the over on that win total as long as Mike Tomlin lives and breathes feels pretty locked in.
Yeah, it's one of those, when Bama was at their high point of you never bet against Bama at one point. You never bet against Tiger Woods at one point. You don't bet against Mike Tomlin going under 500 until it actually happens. And, oh, by the way, it hasn't in 18 years. So, yeah, I'm taking that one on the over, no doubt about it. The interesting ones to me, Mike, are pick a number, 6.5 and below. So the worst is Carolina, then New England, then Denver, then the Titans, then the Raiders, the Vikings, the Cardinals, and the Giants. 6.5, 5.5, 4.5. Is one or two of those teams is going to show out, right? It happens every year. We know it happens every year. 4 teams that didn't make the playoffs are going to make the playoffs, which means 4 that did aren't. We always have fun trying to do that. But there's always that what we think is going to be a bad team surprises. Last year, it was, quite honestly, it was Houston. With a new quarterback, new coach, new first-time play caller, you thought they were going to have some growing pains, and here they go and win the division and make it to the playoffs. So I like to wonder which one of those teams is going to really go above and beyond what has been predicted for them.
Well, and I think it's interesting, like a team that we've talked about that we thought would be in that range, the Bears, their win total set at 8.5. Like Vegas already clearly thinks very highly of a Bears team that made strides last year and is going to be in line for the number 1 overall pick in the draft this year. Dad, in that group you mentioned, though, I look squarely at the Cardinals. Like that Cardinals team won 4 games last year, knowing through the beginning of the season they had no idea what they were doing at quarterback. You got a little bit of the Josh Dobbs experience. But when Kyler Murray came back, it seemed like a changed player in terms of what we got from him, but also in Jonathan Gannon's system and what they were doing there overall, getting him under center, working him on play action a little bit more in his career, and still seeming physically capable despite coming back off a knee injury during that season. Like, I don't know, Dad. The only caveat for the Cardinals is, obviously, they're still a roster that's in development. They need a lot of other things to help fix it. But just by stabilizing quarterback, the only concern I have is that division is going to be pretty hairy because the 49ers still live there. I think the Rams are going to be damn good this year. Mike McDonald taking over a roster in Seattle that's still got some very talented pieces offensively and some stability there. It's a difficult division, but I think the Cardinals can potentially win 7 games this year just off the strength of, hey, we've got our quarterback back, and when he is healthy and if he's situated the right way where we're not asking questions about his preparation, I think all of a sudden this could be a team that surprises people.
Yeah, so they had 4 wins last year, and obviously Kyler Murray didn't start the season off coming off the injury. And we were wondering if he was going to play at all because of that injury guarantee. Were they going to move on from him? And obviously they're not moving on from him. They have a lot of holes to fill, but I'm with you. I could see the next step for them. Could it be 6? Could it be 7 games? I could see that coming off of 4 last year. They were pretty busy in the offseason acquiring some talent at a number of different positions because they do have a lot of holes to fill. So I will be interested now. Kyler Murray, the offseason, not rehabbing with the new coaching staff that he had a year ago but didn't get a full season with on the field during the regular season, of where they may go. But I agree. I think they're a team that's going to be better.
And the other one that I thought was interesting, Dad, just because you were so high on them, the Las Vegas Raiders and Chargers conversation we had. Apparently, Jim Harbaugh alone is worth a lot to the folks in Vegas because the Los Angeles Chargers, who won 5 games last year during the final season of Brandon Staley, now have the over-under set at 8.5 games this year, while Vegas is down in that group of teams at 6.5 wins. And I do think part of that is just simply, Dad, questions surrounding the quarterback. And listen, Antonio Pierce, it was a great first stanza last year, but now walking into the first season where he is the main guy from start to finish, there's no caveats, there's no interim tag, there's a lot that still has to be determined about that Raiders outfit. Whereas the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh is blue chip stock, and Justin Herbert is still one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, but Mike, they lost a lot of talent. I mean, I don't know about this one. I think this might be a step back year for them as Jim Harbaugh is trying to construct the kind of grouping that he wants, because we're kind of all there are those that have put Brock Bowers at the first pick for them. There are those that obviously put like a Joe Alt, a offensive lineman. There are those that put a wide receiver there. But you figure it's probably going to have to be on for a team that needed so much help on defense. They gutted the offense outside of the quarterback. So you really wonder where they're going to start stockpiling here.
I mean, Jim Harbaugh waxed poetic about the nature of offensive line play for like 5 minutes the other day at owners' meetings, talking about how it's the only position group that doesn't need another position group to go out and perform and be good. If they don't take Joe Alt or one of those offensive linemen, I'll be stunned. That being said, it's Jim Harbaugh.
Me too.
And you never know what his next move is going to be. The only other one, and I want to get to LSU's pro day after this and some of what we saw yesterday, is the Dallas Cowboys, 10.5, Dad. That's another one that until further notice, we can ask questions about Dallas's long-term future with Dak Prescott and what they believe in there. We can ask questions about their ability to win in the postseason. 12 games each of the last 3 years. Like, until further notice, with this roster, which I understand underwent some changes, didn't bring in any new talent this offseason, but until further notice is at least worth 12 wins in a given season right now with this core. Like, it's kind of like the 49ers, where when we talk about the 49ers problems, they're relative. They're rich people problems. It's relative to the Kansas City Chiefs, who you're being measured against. For the Dallas Cowboys, yeah, you got postseason problems, but regular season, I know there was that conversation on First Take about, does Dallas have a winning culture? Yeah, they won 12 games a year for the last 3 years. That's insane output that not many people can replicate. So until further notice, over 10.5 is absolutely the play for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. The regular season, they play like Tarzan in the regular season, right? Unfortunately, they don't in the postseason. I witnessed and I called that game last year when they lost to Green Bay and just got manhandled by the Packers at home. For the regular season, for the cases of win totals in the regular season, even though they've done nothing in the offseason but lose players, it's still difficult to say they wouldn't win those amount of games because I don't know where the Eagles are going. We think the Eagles should be better. Again, I've never seen a team go 10-1 and not look like a 10-1 team and then absolutely fall off the cliff the way they did. And as we've talked about, third year of O coordinator, third year of D coordinator, I don't know how they're going to be. The Giants I don't expect much from, and Washington is kind of revamping. So they may get it by default, the over 10.5 wins of the Cowboys in the regular season.
Yeah, I think that division is really, really fascinating going into this year. And while Dallas hasn't made the improvements that we would expect a team with their kind of limited window now to have with a coach and quarterback that feel like they're walking the plank this season if they don't get the job done in the postseason. So at GoJo and Golic on Twitter, you can let us know what your most surprising team win total was on the sportsbook the other day. We'll have plenty of time to obviously get into that the closer and closer we get to the draft. But speaking of draft season, Dad, we had a bunch of pro days going off yesterday, including the LSU pro day, where we finally got to see Malik Neighbors, Jayden Daniels both get measured. They both elected to not do so at the combine, which I've said back then, I thought Malik Neighbors just being a good teammate and a dude by helping support his buddy in Jayden Daniels, who we knew was going to weigh in somewhat in the light. People were probably worried about that there. I think he weighed in at 210 pounds. I think he was listed at 205 during his time at LSU. So still not a big frame, Dad, but he went out there and did his thing. I know you're not in on the shorts and T-shirt stuff there, but the part that made me sort of laugh yesterday was Malik Neighbors went out and ran like a 4.35. He looked incredible. He's very, very fast, which if you watch Malik Neighbors play is very, very fast. Catherine Terrell, the ESPN Saints reporter, was at that pro day and said Malik Neighbors said he saw reports and speculation in the media that he was a 4.5 or 4.6 type receiver. He said he wanted to prove that wasn't even close to that and ran a 40 and 4.35. Dad, have you run into anybody who tried to accuse Malik Neighbors, the receiver who's selling being the potential number one wideout, was athleticism that jumps off the screen, was anything other than at least a 4.35 guy? This to me is that Alabama Nick Saban level of chip on your shoulder made up out of nowhere that all the great oones have. Stock up for Malik Neighbors after this.
Yeah, and I have no problem with it. Find something that, to put the chip on your shoulder. I'm cool with that. And you're right. I do not care one iota about these pro days. Not one. It's like looking at these guys do incredibly athletic things, very cool, but there is zero I take away from this. Malik Neighbors and Jayden Daniels could have just stood there and smiled and took pictures with everybody, and it will not change one bit their draft status coming up of where they're going to be picked. Malik Neighbors wasn't going to, if anybody wasn't sure if Malik Neighbors should be drafted over Marvin Harrison Jr., if anybody watched the pro day and said, oh yeah, now I'm taking Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr., you should be fired from your job. If your job is to rate talent like that, if you did it off the pro day, these guys are basically locked in where they're going to be. So to me, the pro day is a great
Dad,
show.
I disagree on that on the
the
receiver front. I think that
go ahead.
I think especially with how closely knotted the conversation's been there, seeing a guy in person, I'm not saying the results matter, but seeing these guys in person, getting a chance to kick the tires on them even a little bit more in a draft that, at least in most people's estimation, is close. I'll say this, Marvin Harrison Jr. is my wide receiver one. Maybe the most efficient mover of any player in the draft, regardless of position, and maybe doesn't have the same explosive traits overall that Malik does, but I don't know, that's the whole conversation around players choosing to or not participate in the pre-draft process is trying to control the conversation and the evaluation of you by either revealing things. Hey, Malik Neighbors said, hey, I'm going to show you how fast I am with a number that you clearly value.
I mean, listen, we can disagree. I think it means nothing. I will continue to say for the quarterback, the thing to me is if you meet with a team going into the meeting room, going into the film room, I think there is value to that. So I'm with that. But receivers, if you can't watch Malik Neighbors and what he did on the field and decide, and there are already people that have him over Marvin Harrison Jr., and that's fine. I don't care. I don't care what your thought process is. Just don't tell me your thought process changed because of a pro day.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. There's just so many things happening at once here right now. At GoJo and Golic on Twitter, Emerson only has 2 pairs of underwear. He divulged that to us earlier in the show. We've got a vote out right now that's got over 2,500 votes on it at this point, asking how many pairs of underwear people own. And 2 to 4 we put out there as an option to represent Emerson and other people of his kind. We are finding out he may actually be the only person operating like this, because with 2,550 votes in right now, 2 to 4 as an option has 0.4% of the vote. Now, I'm not as good at math as Dad is, and so, Dad, if you can figure out how many people that actually is, be my guest. But it may legitimately just be Emerson at this point. And what's worse is this prompted my mom to go in and send me and my dad a picture of my father's underwear drawer that I can only imagine is causing Emerson to salivate over there based on the way that he's talked about Dad's underwear.
Man. Yeah. Well, she's a lucky lady.
I'm trying to decide if I should tweet this out, because I have 3 different kind of underwear in the underwear drawer. I have a normal pair, which is a little longer. I like them a little longer, but I have some pairs in there that are shorter, because if you wear shorts with the longer underwear I wear, when you sit down, sometimes the shorts pull up and you can see the underwear, like especially when I'm golfing or something. So I'll wear the shorter underwear at times. And then I have my workout underwear, my tights, to keep the boys in there good and tight while I'm working out. So I have 3 different type of undergarment in my drawer. And amazingly enough, Emerson, they all fit very easily.
Yeah, like I said, the issue with wearing just 2 over the last 9 years is definitely the waistband is like, stretched out a little bit. It kind of looks like bacon neck, if you remember that from the old like Hanes t-shirt commercials.
Mm-hmm.
But the best part about it, so I just looked down, and it has the word Sax in the front, S-A-X-X.
What?
Sax, S-A-X-X is what it's called. And apparently they're known, and this is probably why I love them so much, for the ballpark pouch. So it's very comfortable. Okay. Hey, it's opening day.
So anyway, we were talking about pro days before, and while Emerson's passion for underpants is only matched and maybe exceeded by my father's war against pro days as an idea. Well, Dad, if you had it your way, would we abolish pro days altogether?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I would be maybe that if I owned a team or ran a team, I might be at that point of saying, yeah, we ain't going to a pro day. We kind of have our evaluations. And when I say that, and why we would go to pro days if I ran a team, it wouldn't be for a Jayden Daniels and Malik Neighbors. It would be for the other players out there as well that maybe you don't know as well. Maybe you see something to where, you want to go watch more film. But the stars, the top players, because let me ask you this, Mike. Before LSU's pro day, there were those that already put Malik Neighbors ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr., and there are those that have Marvin Harrison Jr. still ahead of Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors ran at his pro day. What did Marvin Harrison do? He sat around and did interviews with his dad. And you know what it didn't do? It didn't affect his draft status one bit, because those that already that thought about putting Malik Neighbors ahead of him had already done that before we even got to the pro day. So Marvin Harrison did nothing. Malik Neighbors did do some things, and it's not going to affect where they get drafted or who they get drafted by, in my opinion, one bit. So again, this is only about the upper echelon players, the guys that we know about that are going near the top, that I think it's a waste of time.
So my only issue with your argument, Dad, is just we have no way of knowing what you're claiming, if it's changing anything or not at the top of these draft boards. What we know with these guys is they're now controlling the flow of information. This is about PR management for these prospects. It's the reason why you had Athletes First, an entire agency, say our clients aren't taking this cognitive S2 test because last year you tried to use it as a weapon against our quarterback and CJ Stroud to try and make him look bad, because the entire draft is an exercise of people trying to get great players for less by raising red flags and anonymous sources and all these things that pour out of there. And so a lot of players have now looked at this and said, I am going to control the flow of information. Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of those players where for so long he's been the consensus answer to not just the best receiver, but the best player in this draft class. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, anything I put out there is just going to be something that you use against me, versus Malik Neighbors, who's a part of that group of players that's trying to see if through the course of a long draft season he can crack that shell of Marvin Harrison Jr. at the top of that position. And so what does he do? He says, I know I'm good at fast. I do fast really well. And so if I introduce a concrete result of fast into the environment here, right, wrong, or indifferent, NFL personnel are going to look and say, the thing that I have seen has now been quantified. And I do think that there is something at a human level that does affect people in that way, which is why Malik Neighbors chose to do it instead of just also sitting at home and saying, hey, I'm a great player, I don't need to do this.
Listen, that's fine. I get it. There's no fault on me of players of doing a combine or a pro day. This is what's asked of them, and they can decide whether they do it or not. And if you want to do it, more power to you. My issue is saying that if he ran a 4.340, and because he ran a 4.340 in shorts and a T-shirt, you now put him over Marvin Harrison Jr., I got an issue with that. I do. I have an issue with that. If you can't watch on tape how fast he is, there's game speed, and then there's get in a sprinter stance and run straight ahead for 40 yards. They're different. They just are. And I know a lot is put on the 40. I understand that. And as I continue to say, this is only the upper echelon of players. Malik Neighbors was going to be put somewhere, and he was been put ahead of, as I said, ahead of Marvin Harrison before he even ran that 40. So I understand the players who want to do it, but we have one guy who did it, one guy who didn't do it, and to me, it affects nothing when you're at that level. Again, this is just me. So,
yeah, it's one of those things we can never prove one way or the other if it had an effect or not.
Right. Because
so
the one thing that's, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
I was going to say the one thing we'll never get is if Malik Neighbors is drafted ahead of Marvin Harrison and then they're interviewing the coach of the team that took Malik Neighbors. You know what you're never going to hear? Yeah, when he ran that 4.3 at Pro Day, that was the nail in the coffin of us taking him over Marvin Harrison Jr. You're never going to hear that. No, they're never going to admit that. So you're right. We never really know what the effect is.
I think where the disconnect is, because generally I'm with you about players' participation in this process being largely something that exists only for players who have something to prove, who are trying to make their way up, and who need these concrete results to do it. Like you and I generally agree on. The place we disagree in the entire draft evaluation process is, I think you, from what it sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, look at these events like the Combine and Pro Day and say they're singular events that these people are basing decisions off of, whereas I look at this more and say, hey, when Malik Neighbors runs a 4.35, it's probably just concrete confirmation of, all right, based on what we've measured in the past, based on what we know about guys that fit this certain profile, that run this particular speed, and what they've been able to do in the NFL, which was what I think this is all about, it confirms what we've seen on tape, which is dude runs fast, and based on that comparison now, we can go back and look at other players that have been like him and what that generally does. Like, this is all risk management on the side of teams, but I think it's all connected back to the tape and the evaluation, not just, oh, hey, we saw him be good at the pro day, so he must be good at football.
I agree. Listen, I agree, and I've said that as well. If you use it as part of the evaluation, I understand. But again, for these top guys, when you see validation of a 4.3, then what about Marvin Harrison? He did nothing. So he validated nothing outside of his tape, and he'll probably be the first wide receiver taken. So, I mean, he didn't validate anything for the scouts or for the teams, yet the teams are still going to go on what they saw on tape and take him most likely as the first wide receiver taken. So I guess that's what I say on the other side of it. And I don't care either way if a player does it.
There are different stations in life, though, because he's been the top guy. And so in theory, he's got less to go out there. He's not trying to get anywhere. In his mind, he's been there. Versus Malik Neighbors, who especially in the last year came on in a big way, is now finding himself in these conversations. And if you're trying to then jockey for position and get to the top, I do think then you start to look at, all right, what can I get out there that's advantageous to me? And putting 4.35 out there, even if we firmly believe nobody was saying you were a 4.5, 4.6 guy, I don't think it hurt. And certainly knowing that you've got that in the bag helped a lot didn't help a lot, but helped some for Malik Neighbors relative to the field yesterday. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. And we've got opening day of Major League Baseball coming up, a holy holiday for many, and probably no one more so than our next guest. Very excited to talk to our old friend and teammate, Tim Kurkjian, great ESPN MLB analyst, but also now, I think for the intents and purposes of this, a family show, the co-host of Is This a Great Game or What? A podcast with his son, Jeff Kurkjian, as well. So, Tim, good morning. We're glad to have you here, and congratulations on the start of this podcast here. I don't know if the father-son podcast dynamic can necessarily work as a concept, but I'm rooting for you guys.
Well, I know this. I'm really excited about this. This is something my son Jeff and I have always wanted to do. He's a radio morning talk show host in Philadelphia, country music talk. I called it country western music, and he finally had to tell me, Dad, it's country music now. Get with it. Well, as we know, I'm not with anything. I also think this has got to be the smallest physical father-son connection ever. I mean, you guys are the biggest. But my son and I together are 10'10", and I don't think we weigh 300 pounds between us. So maybe both of you guys in your life weighed more than my son and I weigh right now. So big guys, little guys, it doesn't matter. We're all together in a podcast, and we're going to have some fun. It's going to be joyful, and I love baseball, and I love my son.
Oh, we know you love baseball. We want to get into baseball. We could talk for hours with you about baseball. The last thing I'll tell you, because you're just getting ready to start this, when Mike and I first did a show together, I expected, Timmy, that my son would show the reverence to his father who had been in this business for so long, and he didn't. So get ready for that from your son, to not show you the reverence and respect you deserve and probably jump right down your throat pretty quickly.
Right. He called me Tim on the air the other day, and I said, listen, you will refer to me as Dad. I am your father. I am not your best friend, okay? I'm your parent here.
We had that conversation with a boss of ours at ESPN when I first started working on Golic and Wingo. Would I call him Mike or not? And I looked at them like they had two heads. I said, he's my dad. I'm going to call him Dad, and this is going to be the last time that we talk about this. So I'm glad you set the tone on your end, Tim. As we get ready. Again, great. The podcast is This a Great Game or What? It's going to be awesome. And Tim, your joy for baseball is part of why I was so excited to have you on today. I've always said every time I talk to you, I leave more excited about baseball and I leave more looking forward to it. Is this day in particular, is opening day your favorite day of the baseball calendar?
It is, because it's the sign, the symbol that, warm weather is coming, that summer vacation is coming. We play an entire baseball season in one calendar year. This is a national holiday. At least it is in my family. People take their children out of school on opening day to take them to the game or let them watch on TV. We don't do that too many other places. That's why opening day is the best. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up, extra early as always, drink a Diet Mountain Dew, and look at the box scores, which has been for my entire life my favorite thing to do. And I can't wait to see the first round of box scores tomorrow morning.
Completely agree. I question anybody's parenting skills that they don't let their kids get out of school to go to a game or watch a game. I'm completely with you on that. Has to be asked, though, is how much of a cloud over opening day is the Shohei Ohtani situation in Los Angeles?
Yeah, it's really sad that this is happening. It's not good for baseball, Shohei, the Dodgers. And even though he came out the other day and was much more forthcoming and direct and blunt than I thought he would be in his statement, there are still a million questions that need to be answered about this. Now, do I think this is going to seriously affect Shohei on the field, seriously affect the Dodgers? I don't think so, but we'll see. And we need to know way more than we know right now. So I was so excited about watching the Dodgers play this year, because they're going to be the greatest traveling roadshow in the history of the sport. And they still will be, but now it'll be for another reason. And that's the unfortunate part. So as a baseball fan, not a journalist, I'm hoping we get all this cleared up and we can just talk about the game on the field, but we're not going to be able to do that for quite some time.
You mentioned that the Dodgers are going to be, I think, a national fascination for so many people. Outside of that, Tim, what's the baseball story or headline or underlying plot that you're most excited about heading into the beginning of this season, maybe outside of the Dodgers?
Well, I'm really interested to see if the Rangers can repeat, which hasn't happened, in well over 20 years now. The Rangers have a great offensive team. And wait till you see this Wyatt Langford guy who's going to be their everyday DH. He had an amazing spring. I think they have a chance to win the World Series again if, of course, they can tread water until Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom come back this summer. That's just one of a million stories that we're watching. And in my state, Maryland, I'm fascinated by where the Orioles are right now, how they went from 50 wins to 83 to 101. And now people are wondering, can they win 100 games again? And they have this Jackson Holiday kid, Matt Holiday's son, best player in the minor leagues last year. He'll be up sooner rather than later. There is so much excitement wherever you look in the big leagues, and that's what makes me so excited about the 2024 season.
Tim, who's that team possibly this year, like a Baltimore, going from 50-plus to 80-plus to 100-plus wins, that has started the ascension a little bit and can really maybe pop onto the big scene this year?
Well, there are two teams who I don't think are going to the playoffs, but I think are on the right track and are going to make a major dent. Number one is the Tigers. The Tigers have some really good young players on that team. They've got Casey Mize, one of the best pitching prospects in baseball, back now after injury, and that is a winnable AL Central. So they might be able to make a push, get over 500, and start edging towards being a contender when they really weren't last year. And in the same division, the Royals were awful last year. They lost 106 games, but they really made some improvements. And a dear friend of mine, Mark Feinsand, just predicted that the Royals were going to win the American League Central. Wow. I don't see how that's going to happen, but he's really smart. He sees something that others don't. So every year, you guys know this, one team, usually two, come out of nowhere and you just slap your forehead and go, how did that happen? How did I miss that? Maybe the Royals, maybe the Tigers are those teams that come from nowhere and suddenly are in it in September.
Tim, only a couple minutes left here. We've talked so much about the team and the Dodgers out in the left coach here that I feel like we haven't said much about the Yankees, who've got Juan Soto over there now, who have this roster still full of highly paid stars here. What has to go right for the Yankees to finally start to get back in some of those conversations and around championships that they're used to?
Yeah, they have to tread water until Garrett Cole, who for me is the best pitcher in the game, comes back. Now, let's say that's on June the 1st. I thought they needed another starting pitcher before Garrett Cole got hurt. Now I think they need two, because I'm not sure that rotation is going to hold up in a very stout American League East. But having said that, the Yankees are going to score 200 more runs than they did last year. Juan Soto changes the entire look of the team. And if they get a healthy Aaron Judge, I saw Giancarlo Stanton this spring. He's got a different body. He's more athletic. He's less rigid. He's going to have a comeback season, I believe. And if they can get DJ LeMahieu back, I think they're going to be a demonstrably better offensive team. And they might be able to slug their way through until they can get Cole back, say, early June.
Tim, listen, I mean, you and I have had been friends for years. We talked a lot over the years on our shows, and you've done it with me and my son now as well. I'm very happy for you. This is your time of the year, but I'm even more excited for you that you're doing the podcast with your son. I think there's nothing better, in all seriousness, than I've done than be able to do a show with my son. So for you to be able to do a pod with your son, that just shows the relationship you have. I think it's an awesome thing, and best of luck with it.
Well, thanks. This is the biggest day of my career today, honestly, and I mean it. Thank you guys for having me.
Is this a great game or what is the podcast? GreatGameOrWhat.com. You can check out all the information about it. Again, if you want to experience unparalleled baseball joy between father and son, This is the place to go for it as we all get set and fired up for opening day here. Thank you so much, Tim. We appreciate it.
Thank you, fellas. See you soon.
All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to end our day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Catch the best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on your radio. And if you miss us or any of our great guests, and I got to say, we are full of regret, as Tim Kurkjian, ESPN MLB analyst, the co-host of a great podcast with his son Jeff, Is This a Great Game or What, was on here. And in a day where we've discussed Emerson's only having 2 pairs of underwear, we neglected to ask Tim Kurkjian how many pairs of underwear that he has in his closet. We did poor journalism here, and we got to wear that. That's on us. We let down you, the listener, you, the watcher, you, the viewer of this, and so we apologize from the bottom of our hearts. We're going to try and effort that information off air and see if we can get it. But, Dad, there's no 2 ways about it. We messed up on that. We have to own it.
We did. I mean, because the best thing we could have gotten out of today is Timmy Kurkjian will be everywhere today. And we wanted people, when they first see him, to only think about, I wonder what kind of underwear or how many pairs of underwear he has, and not about what he's talking about baseball. So that's our fault. And you know what, Mike? I put it on me. I was the last one. I thanked him. I ended it. We had a little bit of time left. That's on me. That's my error. I apologize.
Way to pull the thumb on that one, Dad. So if you guys still want to hear the interview, despite the fact that we didn't get the answer about underwear, you can get it wherever you get your podcast, or as soon as we get done here, right on YouTube. And guys, let's get to this with a little update from our buddy Jesse. Jesse Cofield, who has been in Emerson's chair on this show, who's out on maternity leave right now with her new beautiful son, Henry, showed us a little bit of the insight into the good life that she's living right now yesterday, tweeting a picture. Now, it started off with just a picture of Jesse enjoying a burger, making the joke about, is this how you get the bounce back bod? And it's a great looking burger. And I looked at that and I thought, that looks delicious. I wonder if that's maybe a Five Guys burger, but something didn't look right with the bun. And so, Dad, you looked for an update on that. And of course, it's a burger from Smith & Walensky, as Jesse can never not be on brand as the wealthiest taste on this show.
Mm-hmm. Again, for those maybe that have joined the show as of late, Jesse Cofield has been where Claudia is, and she had been pregnant since we started the show, and finally is on maternity leave, had her son. But this is a woman who we've talked about around Thanksgiving, who basically didn't have turkey, had caviar and stone crabs flown in from Miami, and she lives in Boston. So this is what we're dealing with. So the least shocking thing we could hear as we're doing our Starch Madness and talking about fast food burgers, and Mike, you and I eating about every fast food burger there is, there she is with a burger from Smith & Walensky's. The least surprising thing known to mankind, that's where her burger is from. So she, you know what? She's just cut different than all 3 of us. We got you and I that would eat fast food burgers. We got a 2 underwear guy in Emerson, and she's out eating, the creme de la creme of these steak places.
It's like Lady and the Tramp with Jesse and I.
I was going to say, Emerson, you've been with Jesse work-wise professionally here so much longer than we have here. What's the most Jesse thing you've ever seen her snack, food, beverage-wise ever bring into the equation?
Usually it's what she has at her house. The times that my wife, will go over there and hang out. Jesse will have us over every once in a while for some supper and to hang out with Thor. She doesn't really bring anything in here to the office. She'll go to the nice, fancy plant-based smoothie joint, like right around the corner from the office here, all plant-based, healthy bowls, or, she'll go grab like an egg sandwich or something at Tate, like up the road. And then here, every once in a while, I want you guys to know, I've caught her cheating multiple times. She loves to grab the frosted mini wheats, okay? She'll eat like a little mini cup of those, and then every once in a while, she'll go back in there, grab some Frosted Flakes, something like that, and say, okay, I see you. All right. Little cheat day here, Mama.
Little crack in the facade there from Jesse. All right, we're on to her games here now. That's good to know, but it's also good to know that she's doing well on maternity leave right now, no matter where it came from. That burger looks excellent. Emerson, let's get on to that here, as we have got a broadcasting legend flexing big time, according to the words of another broadcasting legend.
Yeah, Ian Eagle says he has waved the white flag on late nights with Bill Rafferty here. So he was 29 years old, we'll talk in Eagle here, when he realized that he couldn't hang with Bill Rafferty until the buzzer. Eagle, who has replaced Jim Nantz as the top college basketball analyst here for March Madness this year, is working alongside Rafferty. And Rafferty's 80 is known for, whole court eating and perhaps enjoying a couple of adult beverages here. So it just sounds like the guy likes to have a good time, and good for Eagle recognizing, man, I can't hang with this dude.
So understand, a lot of times after, if you do night games especially, Mike calling football games or me calling football games, sometimes you go out with the crew and hang out for a little bit. And Raftery has been incredible at this. On night games, he goes out and has a couple of drinks, and here's, a 29-year-old who can't keep up with him. I would love to see Mike, because from what we haven't gone to it yet, maybe we should, what we hear at the combine. Where, after the combine, like these coaches and GMs and everybody else, they're out till all hours of the morning. It's like party time at the combine. So it seems like Raftery would fit right in on that and be outlasting a lot of these younger people at 80 years old.
Okay, guys, who is your Raftery? Who's your Raftery? Is there someone you guys called games with, hung out? If you want to keep it safe for work here, or someone you're like, ooh, I don't know if I really want to go with you to grab that steak and martini after this.
Not anyone that I can think of, because, Dad, I think this
Smart
is more
answer.
of a your generation of broadcasters thing.
Yeah.
I will say one time when I was at Nebraska, I was doing an event there, and College Game Day was in town for Nebraska and Ohio State. And they showed me a picture that they had of like a young Lee Corso out riding a mechanical bull at one of the quads after they had gotten done with College Game Day. So just furthered the legend of a guy that's already one of the biggest fixtures around the sport, was Lee Corso riding on this mechanical bull, showing off for everyone in his younger days.
When you guys were very, younger, and I was calling college games, I would hang out after the Saturday night game because I couldn't leave till Sunday, and we'd go out and we'd have some drinks, and I would come home sometimes Sunday morning feeling kind of rough, and you guys were young then, and your mother would be like, "Hey, listen, you want to go out and have a good time with your crew after the game? That's cool." But you can't come home then on Sunday and just say, "Oh man, I had a rough time. I got to lay around all day." Get your ass up and take care of the kids. So I kind of learned to Irish goodbye it a few times.
No, that's the move. I've learned that when I go out with people who have kids, that could be trouble, because they're just taking advantage of the one night they get away from their kids, their wife. Me, I want to get back home to my dogs. I don't want to be out till 11. I want to be in bed at 9.
There you go.
It's a different problem for different stages of life. Speaking of kids, Emerson, let's get to the third here. Steve Belichick had the time the other day.
Yeah, that's right. In his press conference at the University of Washington, where he was being introduced as the team's new defensive coordinator here, Steve Belichick was asked the difference between him and his dad. Here's what he had to say.
No, we definitely have similarities. I got a job and he doesn't. He knows that. But yeah, I look up to my dad. He's a mentor to me, but I'm myself, and like PC said, excited to get out on the field and work with these guys and work with the kids and recruit kids, and it's kind of just going to be myself. I'm not going to try and be him.
All right, GoJo, what's the biggest difference between you and your dad here? Not counting the hair. That's an easy one.
I was just going to say, this one, unfortunately, is a joke I walk into that doesn't work out well for me. I'll say this. I know Steve had this one in the holster for a while, ready to go into this press conference. He's been waiting years for that moment as we get ready for the Washington Nepo babies. That staff also includes Brennan Carroll, Pete Carroll's son, in there, so I'm obligated to root for them now.
I'm wondering, Mike, if January 1st, 2021, I did the Fiesta Bowl, and that was my last official duty with ESPN. So January 2nd, when you were still doing a show at ESPN, I don't remember. Did you go on air and say, now I have a job and my dad doesn't, just like he did?
It led the department meeting that day. I made sure to get out in front of that one very quickly and remind people that I was the captain now, until I wasn't either. So if you enjoyed this show and the father-son combination, much like Tim Kurkjian and his son Jeff, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review it, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.